Hello, I'm Eric D'Souza, and we are continuing our series of talking with the authors and contributors of Cold Canadian Crime Anthology, published by Crime Writers of Canada, available on Amazon and Kobo. And we've been sort of pushing through as many authors as we can during this Christmas season because the anthology is currently on sale at both Kobo and Amazon at 40% off. So it's a great time to pick it up. And I believe if you do it soon, you still have time to have it as a Christmas present. Joining me today is sort of a rare sight, a male contributor to Cold Canadian Crime. Today we're talking to Blair Keetch. Hi, Blair. How are you today?
Very well. Good morning, I guess, for you, Eric. It's afternoon here, but I believe you're on the West Coast. So nice to meet you virtually.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, I'm 3 hours behind you, but the joy of Zoom is that doesn't really matter, does it? So, Blair is a prolific short story author who has appeared in The Key of 13, Heartbreak and Half-truths, Grave Diagnosis, and several online sites, including Shotgun Honey and Dark Stormy BC. That was just a list of a few of them. He's been in many, many more. He's also been busy writing his first novel, Flight Risk. Blair, while doing my research, I saw an interview you did with Donna Carrick about 2 years ago, and you were working on your novel at that point, and I've also been on your website. You say it's a work in progress, so I wanted to ask, how's it coming along?
It's coming along fairly well now in the present state, and I'll sort of flesh that out a little bit. The novel Flight Risk, I worked in the airline industry for about 20 years, and actually for a period of about 5 years, I lived out of a suitcase more or less and traveled all sorts of places, wonderful places internationally as a project manager. And that's sort of where I got the germ or the origin for a character that, hopefully will become a recurring character. And I started work on that a few years ago. And then, of course, COVID hit. And, COVID obviously impacted all of us on a personal level, having to quarantine, less social contact, but it also impacted me on a writing level in the fact that my character travels to several different countries over the course of the book, and a lot of the countries that he goes to for a while weren't accepting any people from other countries. So it sort of rightly or wrongly stalled me while I was trying to get my head wrapped around that reality. Is that going to be our life forever? Now that we've sort of hit a new normal, if you will, I've started to move forward and being able to spend a lot more time writing on it. I'd say I'm probably about 75-80% through the first draft right now. So hopefully by early next year, I'll have a first draft and then get into the joys of rewriting. But
Editing.
I think COVID was a challenge for many writers from a plot perspective. I did have a short story that I submitted where just one character referred to COVID almost as an aside, and the editor came back and said, "No, I don't want any even allusion to COVID. Pretend that COVID doesn't exist or has never happened." Yet on the flip side, I was recently reading one of the Michael Connolly novels with, the Bosch and Ballard characters, Harry Bosch, and, they're going somewhere and they mask up, and then Ballard eventually convinces Harry Bosch to get a vaccine. So he really incorporated it, and it made it feel very fresh and current. So, you do have opposing views on how you incorporate it. But now that things are more stable, I feel comfortable that my character can go to all these different ports of call, if you will.
Yeah, it wasn't planning on talking about COVID, but yeah, it is definitely an interesting conversation with a lot of authors. Is that how do we approach it? Do we live in a magical world where it didn't exist and just ignore it, or is it part of our lives now? And it looks like, unfortunately, it's sticking around. And
yeah,
they're asking us to wear masks again, even for the flu now. So yeah, life has definitely changed. And speaking to a lot of authors, COVID sort of affected some that they became super prolific. I know some authors wrote like 9 books during that time, and others, had different focuses. So I'm glad your focus is back onto the novel, but you've definitely been busy on your short stories too. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to sneak in a compliment if you don't mind.
Sure.
On your website, blairkeetch.com, you have a sneak peek. And if there's ever a contest, and I've told this to a few people, but you should submit for best first line. It's a great one that catches your eye attention or the reader's attention quickly. As far as airplane crashes went, it was pretty unremarkable.
Yeah,
I hooked right away. So
I'm
nice job.
thank you. I'll take any compliments I can get. I'm a person that really likes a strong first line opener, and I'm always a big fan of when I'm reading a book, if the first line really hooks you in. And I actually spent a lot of time on that first line, doing little variations of it, but some of my, when I was growing up, for instance, because my mother was English, one of the authors I read a lot as a child, besides Agatha Christie, of course, was Dick Francis. And his books always had this, one perfect opening line, and then the plot was off and galloping. So, that's been an influence that.
That's a good influence to have. I'm wondering then about your short stories. You've been in many, many anthologies. I listed a few, but it wasn't all of them. They often come with themes. So Cold Canadian Crime, obviously Canadian, dealing with the cold weather, even the cover's got, a snowstorm on it. What comes first for you? The short story, like I imagine you have a desk or a hard drive full of short stories and you think, oh, I could just tweak this one a little bit and then it'll fit Cold Canadian Crime, or it'll fit for like in the Key of 13. Or does it like, okay, this is the theme, I better think of something for you?
It's actually more of the latter. I wish I did have stories. I do have some general ideas written down, but the intriguing thing for me on anthologies, quite often they're doing a call out for submissions, and they'll give the parameters of what they're looking for. It has to be so. Here's the short story length, and here's the theme. And as a writer, I find that a great challenge. And here's the theme, and let's start to think of an idea that I can incorporate that will meet that theme. So a lot of the times, not all the time, but for the majority of the times, I think it's like, okay, this is a theme, and here, what can I come up with? And that'll, start the thinking process there. And
I think you challenged yourself in a way, in the sense that you're writing first person in this story. Let's call him Roy. I don't think he actually ever says his real name. So for Roy, I don't think it's a spoiler if we mention that he's a con artist who seems to be mostly preys on women. So a criminal. It's always hard to sort of write first person in a criminal and still make your character likable. Like, was it important for you to make Roy likable and I don't know, relatable is the right word, but you like not turn off the reader?
Exactly, and that was a balancing act for me. And you're right, you never really know his true name on that. And when for the Cold Canadian Crime, I sort of start off with the beginning scene and the end scene, and I knew the main character was going to be a con man, but I sort of, again, without giving too much away, I sort of saw the beginning was, him looking out at a shimmering Caribbean Sea, and he getting a call from one of his prior victims, and the end of the book, or of the story, as takes place in a very cold Canadian climate, literally in the middle of a snowstorm. So I chose, I don't always write in first person, but I would say that I write in first person in the majority of it. And certainly my work in progress is in the first person. But I thought with him being a con man, and I didn't necessarily want to have him being unlikable or whatever, but still recognizing the fact that he's doing unsavory acts and he's taking advantage of people. But I wanted to sort of infuse him with a certain sense of self-awareness and a certain sense of humor as well. So I thought first person was the best way to do that. So, hopefully you like him. Might not want him to be your romantic partner or best friend, but at the same time, you have a certain amount of sympathy for him, or empathy.
Yeah,
I think as the story goes by, hopefully you have a little bit more empathy
yeah. He, like you said, he's very self-aware, to the point where he even says, like, to be a good con man, you can't be too charming,
for
because
him. Right.
people
Because
are
then it
aware of
becomes
charming.
suspicious.
But what's funny is that he, in the first person point of view, he's quite charming the way he talks to us as the reader, because he's, I don't know, lets us in, maybe is the right word.
Yeah,
So even though he's
yeah,
a con man, he seems to be
exactly. Sort
forthright.
of gets to see behind the curtain a little bit. And I wanted him to be charming, but at the same time, fully upfront that he's a con man, and he's more interested in your bank account than your enduring friendship.
Um, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and well, I've mentioned it before. You're one of 3 male authors in this anthology,
Hmm.
um, and I know it's a hard question, but why is it, like, I think when it comes to novels, there's sort of an even split of crime novels, Canadian crime novels being both male and female, but there does seem to be a heavy, I don't know, number of female crime writers who write short stories, and not so many men. And uh, even though I noticed you're in Madame of Mayhem, and you're a minority there too.
Yeah, I think there's 3 of us, three messieurs.
Yeah, they seem to let in 3, right? 3 into the
Yeah.
anthology. So, do you have, like, I know it's a hard question, but do you have any insight to why you think men don't seem to write, or at least we're not as prolific or as good at short story writing?
Yeah, that's a challenging question. It's a superb question, but I'm not too sure if I've got the answer. I can certainly conjecture a little bit, and I'd say that some of my fellow writers within Cold Canadian Crime, the female authors, they may have some insights, but first of all, I think it's a great cause for celebration because we've got some amazing writers, crime writers, who are female, and I think Canada, kudos to them, and Canada has a great reputation for that uh, within that genre. And as you said, for Cold Canadian Crime, the stories were uh, judged blindly, and you still have you come up with where there's just a small minority of male writers, and obviously I'm thrilled to be part of that. Um, it is interesting too that as you said, that with some of my fellow writers in there, like Melody Campbell or Rosemary McCracken or Lisa Nicolets come to mind. They're prolific novel writers, and they're equally adept as short story writers, and you don't quite see that crossover as much with male authors. I don't think there's a uh, secrets to writing short stories, or maybe I should Google it just in case there is. But I think you and I would probably agree that short stories do require a particular mindset, and you've got to get your writing style in a certain perspective, if you will. And I think for me, it's part of it. You've got to have that focus and discipline. And when I mean discipline, obviously writing a full novel, you require a lot of discipline. But for a short story, it's paring everything down into the bare essentials. And you can't go for pages and pages of description. You've got to choose a few sentences that convey a lot for the character and the plot on that. And so for short stories, you just have to have that laser-like approach. And maybe my female counterparts are better, and maybe us male writers don't have the discipline that's required. I'm not sure. Because certainly my own writing, I can be very verbose, and my work in progress is, what I would consider the first draft is horribly bloated and whatnot. Yet for a short story, you've got to wield that scalpel and just get it down to its spare. So I think that's a unique talent into itself. But as I say, amazing. There's just some amazing Canadian crime writers that are female in the short story. So
Yeah.
cause for great celebration there.
Actually, even while you were talking, I was thinking about how even the staff, the people who I don't give enough credit to and probably should, who put together Cold Canadian Crime, I believe that was all female led too. So it says on the cover, it's edited by, hope I don't say her name wrong, but Tasia Morgan.
Yeah.
It was put together a lot. The managing editor was Ludvika Uta from a staff member of Cold Canadian, of Crime Writers of Canada. Judy Pence-Sherlock was on the board along with Alice Brena, Susan Daly, Zana Gordon, Winona Kent, and Lorna Poplik. Even the proofreader was Alex Zich, and it was formatted by Karen Abrahamson. So pretty much in a completely female project.
Yeah.
So kudos to them. I don't give them enough credit, so let's do it today.
Right. Well deserved. Yeah.
It was great talking to you, Blair. I believe this is the first time we chatted, so it was fun meeting you.
Pleasure.
And I'll let you get back to your writing and your work.
Okay, great. And as you mentioned before, a perfect holiday Christmas gift for Cold Canadian Crime.
Yeah, so to everyone watching, if they want to learn more about you, they can do that on your website, blairkeetch.com. And if you want to know more Cold Canadian Crime, the best jumping off point is probably Crime Writers of Canada's website. So great talking to you, and thank you to everyone who was listening.
Okay, pleasure. Thank you.